Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late tonight. There were some technical issues, but managed to get it sorted. So I hope you're all very well. So what we're going to talk about this evening? Well, we're going to talk about, of course, what's happening with the welfare bill, a potential rebellion that could bring down Keir Starmer's government, doctors and AI. So there's a rollout of AI assistance for doctors. Is this a good thing or is it a bad thing? And, of course, the ceasefire that's on and off between Iran and Israel. So the first story, of course, I wanted to focus on, and I'll be probably talking mostly about this tonight, is the welfare bill. So there are a few stories I want to cover. First of all, this from Channel 4.
Is it wrong to balance the books on the backs of the sick and disabled people?
There are alternative, more compassionate ways to balance the books.
There are decisions made in this House that stay with you for the rest of your life. This is one of them.
The voices against were many back in March. Now they've multiplied.
How are you going to deal with the rebellion on welfare?
Nice to see you.
Government plans to reform welfare and cut the benefits bill risk ruin the saboteurs, their own MPs.
I was diagnosed in 2019. There's a scale of MS that they measure from 1 to 10, and I'm at 6.
Katie has relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. She works from home, but her personal independent payment, or PIP, she says, is crucial.
And then your current assessment now, what will you get if the new rules come in?
Nothing.
Okay.
The government plans to cut £5 billion a year from the welfare bill. Part of that will mean making it harder for disabled people with less severe conditions to get PIPs.
It would have a significant impact on me financially. Long term, if I have any left over, I'm saving that up to buy a wheelchair. Really, there are days now when I should be using an electric wheelchair to get around independently. I don't have one of those, they're expensive.
Those government plans, though, have hit a major hurdle, an amendment to effectively block the bill signed by more than 120 Labour MPs. You are a first-time MP. This is one of the biggest bills that the government's bringing forward. It's a very big move for you to be going against the government on this. Why are you doing it?
Not really. I mean, it wasn't in our manifesto, so it wasn't a pledge that I stood on when I got elected in July. The government thinks it can raise this amount of money, nearly 5 billion plus, through these cuts. In fact, most of those cuts, those savings will be wiped out because people who lose their benefits will then end up putting more pressure on the NHS. A bit of a dead end, this really, rather than a fundraiser. It's
a complete false economy. So what you're doing is you're taking money from people who obviously need it, but let's just from an economic point of view, it doesn't make any sense. You're taking money from people who will then not be able to work or who'll end up in the NHS because they're not able to get the support they need. So it's a complete false economy. The idea that we're going to save money by taking money from the most vulnerable in society. This is the problem, and I keep saying this. These approaches come from the Treasury. The Treasury don't understand the lives of ordinary people, it seems. And unfortunately, also in the DWP, you have people like the Secretary of State who frankly don't care about the disabled. They don't care about people on benefits or on PIP. So they're happy to see these cuts go through. Now, hopefully this rebellion will be sufficient that it will cause the government to take a step back. But there is, unfortunately, the silver lining for the government, and that silver lining will be the Conservative Party. The Conservatives are likely to vote with the government to ensure that these cuts go through. So you have a Labour government who didn't run on a manifesto of cutting benefits for people, getting support from the Conservatives in order to push through a policy that's likely going to sink the Labour Party. Insane.
a dead end in terms of making poorer people even poorer.
The Prime Minister has vowed to press ahead. The government line, they have no choice.
I think we're always prepared to talk these things through, but we believe that reform of the welfare system is an essential thing to do.
But you're cutting it from people who need it. One thing is to say, okay, we need to reform the welfare state. Okay, but nobody's disagreeing with that. But what are you doing? It's not a reform. It's cutting from the people who actually need, who truly need it. Now, do multimillionaires and billionaires need a tax cut? Do they need non-dom status? Do they need all these loopholes? No, they don't. Why can't you go after them as opposed to going after the most vulnerable? There's no logic, there's no economic sense on display here, and there's no moral sense, of course, either.
It's the right thing to do.
The government say they're listening to disabled people, but we haven't seen the evidence of that with the lack of consultation on these huge cuts to disability benefits. If the government are really listening to disabled people, they will stop these cuts and they will meaningfully protect disability benefits.
This rebellion isn't just a threat to the Prime Minister's economic plans, but a major threat to his authority too.
I want this to be a Labour government that has Labour values at its core.
These cuts to benefits, do you feel that they represent Labour values?
I feel that reform is needed, and I think it's how that reform is done.
That's a very diplomatic answer.
That's me.
But what it wasn't was...
diplomatic.
Yes, I believe that Keir Starmer, what he's doing here, represents Labour values. So these cuts, do you think they represent Labour values?
I can tell you what I've fought for all my years as a Labour MP and my Labour value.
No, they don't represent Labour values. How do cuts to the most vulnerable in society represent Labour values? They're the opposite of Labour values. These are Tory values. It's the Tories that constantly cut support for people on disability, people who are on PIP, or people who are disabled. It's the Conservatives that do these things. These are not values of the Labour Party. Sorry, I'm a bit confused tonight. I'm mixing up the Labour Party and the Conservatives.
I can't tell you what other people's belief systems are.
The Conservatives tonight say they could help the Prime Minister if he jumps through some hoops. Some of his own MPs are saying, though, it's too late. This flagship bill simply needs to be withdrawn.
Well, joining me now from Westminster is Debbie Abrahams, Chair of the Work and Pensions Select Committee. She's one of the Labour MPs who signed the amendment. Debbie Abrahams, you've made it clear, all of you, that you support the principle of reform in this amendment that you're putting forward. But the reality is that if this amendment is chosen and passes, this effectively kills the government's bill, doesn't it?
So on the sort of principles around a reasoned amendment, it is highly unlikely that the Speaker would select that. We've tabled this principally as a symbolic amendment to make sure that we're listened to, really. We have considerable concerns, as your piece describes, Jackie.
Because they're not listening to you right now, are they?
Not as much as we would like. I mean, there have been numerous meetings and so on, but no, there hasn't been.
I really don't understand the motivation behind this. I really don't understand it. Where is the political benefit in punishing disabled people? Is this just spite? Is it the Secretary of State hates hates vulnerable people and is just deciding, I want to punish them? Is this the motivation here? Just nothing but contempt for the most vulnerable in society. I need to punish these people, so this is what we're going to do. Now, the Secretary of State has been on the record for some time spewing sort of anti-disabled rhetoric, or that people on benefits are lazy, or people who are on some sort of social welfare are a sponge on the state. So she has a record going back some years. But this could bring down the Labour government. Is it worth it? It's not worth it economically, and it's not worth it politically.
Any significant movement, and the bill tabled last Wednesday shows that.
Now, 5 years ago, you stood up in the House of Commons looking on the verge of tears, as I remember it, reading out a list of people who had taken their own lives, citing fears or having actually lost benefits under the last government's cuts. Do you believe in their current form that these cuts your government is proposing will actually put vulnerable people at risk?
I am concerned about that, yes, and we have evidence from previous changes in eligibility criteria. Back in 2010, there were changes in employment support allowance, which is similar to the UC health element, and 600 additional suicides occurred as a result of that. That was published in the...
And why is nobody learning from that? 600 people lost their lives as a result of government policies that were there, that were supposedly there to help people. How can any government minister look at that and say, yeah, we need to go further? We need to punish people even more. It's heartbreaking. It's the most vulnerable people in society. We need to go after them, but not the richest people in society who would not miss a few extra quid going out of their pocket to help fund the state. I just don't get it.
Peer-reviewed journal. And in 2017, we saw 130,000 additional new mental health cases, increases in severe poverty as a result of those cuts. And this particular group of people who will be affected is 3 times larger.
So just to be quite clear, you're saying that you believe these cuts in their current form could cost lives?
There is that risk.
Yeah, but like she has to be diplomatic with her language because she's a member of the party. But what she's saying here, if you read between the lines, is yes, people are going to die as a result of these cuts. Now, how can anyone justify these cuts, these changes, if it's going to result in people dying? The Prime Minister would not say, let's go into a pointless war. Well, generally, they wouldn't go along with that if it results in people dying. We're not going to get involved in a pointless war because there's no benefit in engaging in this war if it's going to cost lives. Where they try to sell the narrative that we have to invest in defense to protect people, and here you are taking away support that's a pittance in the grand scheme of things, which is going to result in people dying. The minister, the MP here, is not coming out and saying it directly, but that's what she's basically saying here. That's what she's saying if you read between the lines. I want to move on to stick with this story, but I want to move on to some other aspects here. We're sending a very clear message to the Prime Minister, says Welfare Rebel. At least 125 Labour MPs have signed up to the reasoned amendment that would tank the government's welfare reform bill, and one of those is Stella Creasy, who is on the Politics Hub. Okay. She insists that defeating the bill is not the conversation we're having right now, but what we want is to raise alternative ways of reforming the welfare system with ministers, allowing tax allowance thresholds, including tax thresholds. But she says the rebels are now at a point where they feel the amendment is the way forward. And people have to stand up. MPs have to stand up and say, look, we don't want to go along with this. We don't believe that this is part of Labour values. This is not what the Labour Party stands for. This is not what we were elected on. We were elected to be the opposite of the Conservatives. We were elected to look after the most vulnerable in society, to make sure that workers were protected, but also people who can't work are protected as well. That's the ethos, I believed, of the Labour Party, and Starmer is going in the opposite direction of that. Just want to cover another few things on this. Here is the Secretary of State herself. Let me bring up this clip where she's speaking to Peston.
You have said that the net savings from what you're doing are £5 billion a year, but you are not saying in this same interview how many people will actually be helped into work, and that disparity.
Okay, can we please do something about this? And I really wish journalists would do something about this. It's not an in-work benefit. So this idea, we need to make cuts to PIP, so we force people into jobs. But many people, once again, it's not an in-work benefit, so it's not related to work. So many people who receive PIP are not working, and they will never work. But there are also people who are working thanks to PIP. And if you take that away, then they're not going to be working anymore. It's complete nonsense to think, okay, what we'll do is we'll force people into work by making their ability to access PIP more difficult. It's counterintuitive.
It's going to alarm people because they are going to take away from this that what you're being driven by is a Chancellor who needs savings, not by helping...
Yes, this is what it's about. I think in part it's the Chancellor who wants savings. Chancellor has her budget. The Chancellor has decided we have set these new rules and I'm going to stick to the rules and everyone else has to follow my rules. And for example, welfare, well, the bill is too big, we need to cut it. Yes, but people are going to die. I don't care, just cut the bill. But people are going to lose the support they need. I don't care, just cut the bill. That's it. And she has somebody like Liz Kendall in the DWP who's happy to go along with that, it seems. She doesn't have a problem with cutting support for the most vulnerable. Phonebox Chicken, thank you so much for that super chat. Liz Kendall was backed by The Economist in 2015 when Corbyn won. Enough said. Never go Reform UK. Yes. You know, while Reform UK this week are talking about giving more money to rich people, in a sense, allowing more loopholes for them, who is standing up for the most vulnerable? Maybe the Liberal Democrats, maybe the Green Party, the SNP, Plaid in Wales, sorry. But who's looking after the interests of the most vulnerable? Well, it doesn't seem to be the Labour Party. Labour MPs are. Many of them are up in arms over this. But the party doesn't seem to be looking after the interests of the most vulnerable. Thanks once again, Phonebox Chicken. Love the name.
Vulnerable people.
Can I say to you, firstly, we've been really, really committed to saying if you have a severe disability or a lifelong health condition that means you will never work, you will be protected.
But they're not being protected. Like, you've changed the goalpost. You've moved the goalpost. You've changed the criteria. Like, people who could receive PIP before are now not going to receive it. Like, the criteria, they've made it much more difficult for people to access PIP. They've just made it more difficult. Instead, you know, like the opposite of what happened during Brexit, where they made it easier for people to drive trucks. They're actually making it more difficult for people to access the support they need. And as was pointed out by many people, this support is for both people who are never going to work, but also people who are working thanks to that support.
But that wasn't my question. Liz, that wasn't my question.
You asked me about protecting the vulnerable, and I've answered that.
No, but I'm asking you about how many people will be in work as a result of these changes. And people will notice you can't give a number on that.
Well, I've told you about...
I would prefer to know how many people are going to be affected by this. How many people are going to be kicked off PIP as a result of these changes. Not so much how many people are going to be working, because many people are already working when they're receiving PIP. The question should be, how many people are going to be kicked off this?
The evidence on which the pathway to work, £1 billion of employment support is based, intensive support for sick and disabled people to get work. I would also say this to you, I would be reforming this system, whatever the fiscal position, whatever the situation.
But you wouldn't be doing it now.
So it's not about money. So it's just about punishing people. So it's not even about money. It's not like, well, we have to make these cuts. She would make the cuts anyway. Which is actually worse. Because if you... this is truly ghoulish behaviour. So she's basically saying, I don't care about the cost. I would make these cuts anyway. I would punish people who are receiving PIP at the moment. I would kick them off it, irrespective of the cost. So even if we had loads of money, I would still punish these people. That's ghoulish. That's complete and utter contempt.
Now, would you? You'd be doing it in a few months' time when you had more evidence.
I would be reforming the system because I believe writing people off and condemning them to a life on benefits, if they could work with the...
Oh my goodness, we keep hearing this line. It's not an in-work benefit. PIP is not an in-work benefit. She keeps saying... people have been left on the sidelines. They should be allowed to work. What we're going to do is we're going to force people off. We're going to cut people's support and then force them into work. Now, a completely separate issue, or in some way, what about AI? What about robotics? What about automation? It's taking a lot of jobs away from people. This week, Tesla has released a new cyber taxi, or self-driving taxi. Now, I'm not sure whether it's safe or not. It's a separate issue. But we're starting to see a gradual move away from jobs. So you have a government minister, Secretary of State, saying we need to force people into jobs when there are going to be fewer and fewer jobs in the future. And we're going to force people into those jobs by cutting support that they need. The support they receive today, it's going to go because we have to get the numbers down. Where are you going to send people? So here's an example of somebody who is going to suffer the consequences of the removal of PIP.
On this people that are disabled is not the answer. This government needs to remember that working people should not pay the price for the economic situation that we're in. We didn't cause it. Hi, I'm Dawn Lovett. I work for the NHS in Lincoln. I feel very proud that I'm heading towards my 20th year. I am an NHS worker. Person in receipt of PIP, I'm proud to also be in GMB. And it's good to feel able to help people, even though I'm a lot less able. I only have 3/4 of a lung. In the last few years, I've had 2 life-threatening illnesses, but I have to make myself get out of the house. Never thought I'd been able to hold down a job this long. It wasn't for the help PIP now. That's what it's there for, to help me with things. We're not saying it because we want it. We're saying it because when you haven't got it, you suddenly realise you need it.
So here's a lady who is working. She's receiving PIP, and because of PIP, she's able to continue working. I don't know if you were able to hear there, or you could see the message where it said she has lost over half of her lung because of illnesses. So it's very difficult, obviously, to get out of bed. It's difficult to get down the stairs. It's difficult to do things in the house. It's difficult to get to work. It's difficult to work as well. But thanks to PIP, she's able to do this. So Liz Kendall wants to take this support away from this woman. And then what's going to happen? She's not going to be able to go to work. And how is this a benefit for the economy? How is this a benefit for society? It's not. It's the opposite.
All this speculation around PIP, it's torture. Yeah, you feel sick to the stomach, and it's not because you're trying to hide or cheat the system. It's because you know how hard it is.
And I hate this line. I'm not a criticism of the lady here, but this cheating the system. The idea that so many people, and we saw it with the winter fuel allowance as well, but so many people are afraid to claim, not because of the procedure, not because of the difficulty of it, but because they feel guilty. They have been convinced over the last number of years, particularly by the right-wing press, that you're a sponger if you're on benefits. You're a sponger if you are, you're skiving. You're not contributing to society. You're a problem. You're a burden on the state if you claim benefits or if you rely on something like PIP. So it's been beaten into people that they're a problem. And of course, many people will not claim the benefits that they're entitled to. Is Liz Kendall upset, angry, or as angry? She keeps saying she's angry about the fact that people are not able to get into the jobs that they deserve. Is she angry about how many people have not claimed benefits? There's something like £20 billion unclaimed because people don't know their rights. Or people do know their rights, but they have this stigma. They have this stigma attached to claiming benefits that they decide not to, or they don't claim all of the benefits that they're entitled to. This is why I keep calling them entitlements. I prefer to call them entitlements because that's what they are. They're not benefits, they're entitlements. They're things that you are entitled to. Some things you're entitled to, other things you're not. But they're not benefit, because a benefit is something extra. But these are not extra. This is the social contract we have. We follow the rules and the government do something for us in return. We don't break the law and we get something back from the state. That's the social contract. If the government is not upholding that, then what is the point of having a government? What's the point of a society? Let me read some of your comments, guys, because I know some of you are going through this, and I wish I could help. I wish I could do something. All I feel I can do is talk about this and try and air some of your opinions, some of your positions on this, because what needs to happen is there needs to be a U-turn. There was a U-turn on the winter fuel allowance. There were U-turns on other things. This needs to be something that the government reconsiders. And I really hope that the Conservatives don't go along with the government, and I really hope that Keir Starmer feels the heat over this and decides, no, we're not going to go through with it. PIP is providing, it's not a huge benefit for people, but it's enough for them to get to work, or it's enough for them to live a reasonable quality of life. And I just go back a little bit to read some of your comments, guys, because I think it's really important. Killer says, all talk from most of the Labour MPs, I think they're still in the party. If they feared, they'd walk the floor. The future looks completely bleak in this country, I'm sorry to say. I'm sorry to agree with you on that. Mashhood. For everyone, and maybe Max, who worse, the evil Chancellor or Liz, did not trust. Reform. I thought Labour hated reform. I finally got myself a job after claiming universal credit for a year. I didn't mind working to contribute, and I hope I never have to do it again. Well said, Suzanne, sorry. Zara Sultana is my MP. I'd vote for her again, as the Liberal Democrats have no chance here. She's really good. She's really fiery. She's somebody who truly believes in what she says. Coffee with a brain. I presume you're talking about Liz Kendall there. My wonderful late husband, who I lost 16 months ago to colon cancer, was kept waiting for far too long for PIP. It's absolutely heartless. I'm so sorry to hear that. I believe that's Mandy. Your name has changed on the thing. I'm so sorry to hear that, Mandy. My condolences. And thank you so much for your support over the last number of years as well on the channel. That woman is a hero in the video. Yes, she is. Penalized for being disabled. Stop the yachts. Yes, that would be a better sense. Instead of stopping the boats, stop the yachts and metaphorically hang them upside down and see what change falls out, and use some of that. We hear from Farage and others say, we need to hold on to the multimillionaires and billionaires. We don't want them to go. I'm on benefits. I'm of the opinion that asking the DWP for anything usually ends in tears. And this is something, thanks Captain for that comment as well. And this is something that I really rail against, this idea that the DWP, when you go into the job centre or the DWP, when you speak to the DWP, either on the phone or by email or whatever, they should be there to help you. It should be a situation where you feel comfortable going in, not massive amounts of anxiety. It should be a comfortable situation. You walk in and they lay out, okay, tell me about your situation. Let's see what benefits you're entitled to, or let's see what support you're entitled to. And instead it's the opposite. It's like, okay, you're dodgy. We need to find a way to get you off benefits and into work, or we need to find a way to deny you, the support you need. Because we start from a position that you're a sponger, that you're somebody who's trying to game the system, that you're dishonest. Yeah, this is the fundamental thing. The government treats citizens like they're dishonest. We treat politicians like they're dishonest because they've constantly demonstrated that to be true. But citizens have to prove that they're not dishonest in order to get the support that they're entitled to. Like, how fucked up is that? You have to go in and beg and plead and jump through hoops with the DWP in order to get the support you're entitled to. Not that you benefit. It's not a benefit, it's your entitlement. How can anyone defend that situation? I would love to speak to somebody from the DWP. I'd love to speak to somebody from the government and ask them this question. Why do you have a toxic environment in the DWP? It's there to help people. Isn't it there? Isn't that its job? To help people, to make sure that people receive the support they need. They keep saying that they do. Politicians keep saying, we want to support the most vulnerable in society. Then why do you make it so difficult? They're talking out of two sides of their mouth. Liverpool man says, I applied for PIP and was denied, but I heard that from many sources that they automatically fail you first time and see if you bother trying again. Yeah, and I would not be surprised if that's the case. Well, it's automatic. Automatically deny somebody, and if they come back again, well, then they're a legitimate case, or a more legitimate. In many cases, when people threaten to take the DWP to court, or where they make an appeal, they're automatically successful. Isn't that strange? You know, if the DWP truly believed that they were in the right, then they would fight it. But they don't. They generally roll over because they know that they're wrong. They know that their system is broken, or that it's designed to punish people. It's completely fucked up. It's not that the care needs to be reformed. It's the actual system that needs to be reformed. It's the approach to people that needs to be reformed. Not the amount of money people receive or whether people receive support or not. Stop the non-doms, I agree 100%. Going to the job centre is like a visit to the Spanish Inquisition. And it shouldn't be. You should feel welcome. I'm going in there and I'm going to... It should be like going to the Citizens Advice Bureau. Like, why is there a Citizens Advice Bureau? Why doesn't the DWP offer that service? I can imagine somebody from the DWP watching this and going, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? You know, are you insane? We're not supposed to help people. We're supposed to punish people. We're supposed to treat them like shit. So if we treat them really, really badly, they'll get into jobs. You know, that's the approach. I think that's the real approach. It's like, treat people who come in like absolute scum, show them nothing but contempt, trick them into doing jobs, because we need to fill a quota. I'm not saying that everyone who works in the DWP or the job centre is like that, but that's the mentality. Disabled groups should sue them, the government, for all the debts caused. They should. My helpers were okay, and I was treated as something I had to do. And I was just treated as something I had to do, but it was bleak. So much energy I've got wasted. I'm sorry. Dealing with the DWP is overwhelming for most people who most need support. And you know, many people have many different issues that they have to deal with in their lives. Many people have mental health issues, and it's difficult to get out of the house. It's difficult to go into a job centre. It's difficult to travel around town. It's difficult to do these types of interviews. It's very stressful. It's very difficult for them. But the response from politicians and worse, political commentators is, well, these people are just lazy, or it's too easy. You notice the people who keep banging on about how benefits are too easy to access have never actually claimed them themselves. Have never actually gone through the system. These people, like the ones on Talk TV or on GB News, they should be forced to go through the benefit system and realize, okay, actually it is terrible. But I think these people are grifters, so they would still come out and say, well, yeah, well, I found it wonderful. I found it too easy. The DWP, all the charm of a snake. And once again, and I'm seeing this throughout the comments here, it shouldn't be like that. Why is it like that? I would love to ask a minister, why is the DWP so shit? Why does it treat people with contempt? Because it starts at the top. Because it could change tomorrow. The minister, the Secretary of State could say tomorrow, okay, the new approach is going to be, we're going to treat people with respect. Now, if you don't treat people with respect, you're going to be sacked. You're there to help people access the support they need. We're doing away with all this kicking people off benefits. Anyone who's engaging in that behavior will be sacked. That should be the approach. Why can't it be like that? Because the government don't give a shit. Because they look at this as a cost. People are a cost. Multimillionaires and billionaires are an investment. We don't go after them because they are the wealth creators, they are the job creators, they are an investment. But ordinary people, well, they need to go. Well, there was a show where a politician had to live on benefits, rich house, poor house, maybe. Yeah, like those shows are not really all that helpful because they're curated too much, and of course the politician knows that they will go back to their normal life after. So in some ways there is some things there may be something beneficial in a very limited and specific way, as the Tories do, but they're generally just for entertainment, and it doesn't really change the narrative. The politicians will go back to their comfortable life and they'll be like, well, I'll still vote whatever the party tells me to vote. I'll still vote to punish the people that I was, living with just about a week ago. Here's something I said earlier. This is truly sad from the Labour Party. Are they meant to be for the most vulnerable, poor? Be for the most valuable, the poor, or the poor, the working class, or the greater welfare state, and not cuts for the rich. Not for cuts or the rich. Yeah, they shouldn't be for cuts. Once again, what does the Labour Party represent? What is Keir Starmer's vision? What is his goal? He doesn't seem to have a vision or goal, or if he has one, it's well hidden. But is this it? Because if you don't create a vision, people will create a vision for you. So what is the vision at the moment? Well, we need to punish disabled people because they're expensive. That's it. That's basically the narrative. Disabled people are expensive and we need to reduce the cost. What about 2 years? What about in 2 years when AI has taken most of the jobs and we're on a universal credit? Perhaps for soil and green to appear in supermarkets. Look, I think we're moving in the direction of AI taking over a lot of jobs. And we need to have some sort of alternative, of course, a UBI, Universal Basic Income. But of course, also support for people like PIP, where they can access the support they need. So a universal basic income, but also the support for people. It's not about replacing benefits or entitlements completely, but it's about an extra support for people. Because not everyone is disabled, so they don't need support, but a lot of people are disabled and they do need support, and a universal basic income would not be enough because the cost of living for people who are disabled is much higher, so it wouldn't cover all of them. So while a UBI is good in theory, it's just a stepping stone. It's just a starting block or a starting position. The politician living on benefits was Matthew Paris back in the 80s. Despite spending his days in the library to keep warm, he concluded it wasn't difficult. It'd be nice to put, I don't know, Jacob Rees-Mogg, or something, although he's no longer an MP. Kemi Badenoch, put her in a difficult, but then see, the problem with a lot of this is that they know they'll go back to a comfortable life. So it's a sort of holding your breath or, biting your tongue for a few days or a week and then knowing, okay, well, I'll just go back to comfortable living after that. Guys, I'm way over the time for the break, so we'll just plow on. So we'll just plow on with the next story. The UK must actively prepare for potential war in the homeland, review warns. What's that about? So the UK has to actively prepare for the potential of a wartime scenario in its homeland, a national security strategy has warned. Published today, the national security strategy said it was the first time in many years that such an event has to be considered. The review highlighted Russia and Iran as potential threats, including saying that the latter's hostile activity on British soil is increasing in an effort to silence critics as well as to directly threaten the United Kingdom. It added, meanwhile, some adversaries are laying the foundations for future conflict, positioning themselves to quickly move to cause major disruption to our energy and supply chains to deter us from standing up to their aggression. Now, is this connected to the prescription of Palestine Action this week? Remember, so I'm not sure if you're familiar, but an organization called Palestine Action, they carried out so basically they entered an RAF base. I don't know how they did that. They crossed the runway on an electric scooter. It's amazing. And they spray painted red paint into the engines of 2 aircraft, and I think they damaged another or one of the existing aircraft with a crowbar, I believe. Now, straight away, the government has deemed them a terrorist organization. Now, they haven't killed anyone. They haven't threatened to kill anyone. They haven't injured anyone, as far as I know. They have damaged property. But the government has said that this is a terrorist organization. It's a proscribed organization, which means that if you're a member, you could be jailed for up to 14 years. Good rave band. Yeah. You could be jailed for up to 14 years for being a member of Palestine Action. Now, I don't know what the sentence for people who support it. I imagine if you give money to it, you could be in some serious trouble as well. Maybe not 14 years, but you could be, you could be getting a phone call from MI5 or MI6 or something. I'm not sure which is it. Probably MI5. MI6 is for foreign affairs, isn't it? And MI5 is internal affairs. But you could be in some serious trouble. And of course, you'd be monitored by the police if you have made donations. But this of course, either has a chilling effect. It's the goal of this is to have a chilling effect, or it's to shut down protest. We Scooter first. we saw this with the Conservatives when it came to Just Stop Oil. They wanted to shut down protests there. They also wanted to shut down the protests, the pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel protests that take place every Saturday in London. So this is about suppressing freedom of expression. So, if a group that has not engaged in terrorist activity is now a proscribed organization, you notice that Yvette Cooper didn't actually present any evidence to back up the claim that it's a terrorist organization. It's just, we don't like these people. We disagree with their speech. We disagree with their antics. They're a terrorist organization. Because it was brought up, I believe, by Zoe Gardner, how other organizations in the past had engaged in similar activity. For example, damaging aircraft during the first Gulf War, I believe, the second Gulf War, and also I think when it came to Syria, protest organizations that protesting against these conflicts damaged RAF aircraft, and but they didn't go. I think some of them may have been. No, they didn't even go to jail. The judge said, "Look, if you're damaging these aircraft with the goal of stopping a war crime from being committed, now while that is not actually, as far as I know, a legal defense." It's not something you can use in court as your defense. It's up to the discretion of the judge. But the judge probably realized, look, these people are they're not engaging in type of terrorism that we normally associate with the likes of ISIS or others. I heard Tommy Robinson is a member of Palestine. The good globalist, thanks so much for that. We'll have to, maybe they could do an investigation into It's called Project Esther. Look it up. I'm waiting to get a new computer to create a channel myself to join the resistance. I'm not familiar with Project Esther. I'll have a look into that. What about all the Farage rioters? More damage and harm? Yes. Why is the EDL, although the EDL was not directly connected with this, allegedly, there are some groups online who were egging on individuals. Why are they not a terrorist organization? Why was does the EDL still exist? That's the question. So I think on the government's, playing devil's advocate just for a moment, the government may say, look, the EDL doesn't exist anymore, so we can't deem it a terrorist organization. But it would meet the criteria, I presume. Would Reform UK meet the criteria for terrorist organization? Well, they've done a lot more damage than maybe some others have. The US dropped a massive ordnance penetrator on Iran, which also happens to be something on my my Tinder bio. Well said, Brad. I hope you don't show pictures of it. It's not an OnlyFans, is it? Thanks. Brad, Grindr, you mean? Okay, moving on. Yeah, I wanted to cover this story just very quickly about AI from Sky News. I'm a bit skeptical of this one, but I do think there is something to be concerned about.
Britain will be one of the great AI superpowers.
AI.
We will make sure that this technology is safe.
A revolution at speed. AI, the key to NHS reforms. But if there were safety warnings,
I like Sam Coates, but I hate the way he speaks. It's like always everything is dramatic.
Would they be properly heeded? This is what the future of healthcare looks like. Doctor-patient meetings transcribed and analysed by AI.
All I've got to do here is click on this mic, and that'll bring us this screen, which greets me by saying, hello, Dr. Mehta. I'll start the conversation, go back to listen to what the patient's saying. Once I'm done, I'll pause the recording, and that'll be recorded into the medical records.
What you just saw is
Now, this is actually a good thing, because what it does is it's like having an assistant next to you. So the doctor is speaking to the patient, asking them about their issues, and the AI is recording this and saving this information. Now, the problem we'll get to in a moment is where this information lies. But in theory, this is a good idea, because what it does is it collects all this data, analyzes it, compares it to, for example, when the patient was last here, what issues they raised the last time. Are there connections between what they raised the last time and what they raised today, what their medication they're on? All of this information, which is processed by an AI, is really useful. And they could make predictions like, they have these problems. Perhaps they're going to have these problems in the future. Maybe you should recommend this medication because it's good for this ailment. Or it could, but remember, the patient is also taking something else that they forgot to mention this time, but I remember from their last visit. This is this is the medication they're on. This is, it could link to their family. Other members of their family have these conditions as well. Maybe it's something that they should get checked out. They should get a blood test to make sure that they have, there are all these benefits. But then, of course, we get to the worrying part.
Approved version of ambient voice technology, AVT. Remember that phrase. And thousands of GPs are already putting it into action with the government's encouragement.
I spend 30% of my week doing paperwork. So I think once I've explained all of those features of what we're doing, patients are extremely reassured.
In April, NHS England wrote to doctors to sell the benefits of AVT and set out minimum national standards. But just weeks later, NHS England bosses sent another letter, this time warning of a proliferation of problems. It says, we are now aware of a number of AVT solutions which, despite being non-compliant, are still being widely used in clinical practice. Several AVT suppliers are approaching NHS organisations. Many of these vendors have not complied with basic NHS governance standards.
Look, so what's basically happening is the vendors are going directly to the doctors and saying, hey, use our system and we'll give you a free holiday. Use our system and we'll give you, free merchandise. Like what, the suppliers, the pharmaceutical suppliers have been doing for years, for decades. prescribe this pill and we'll give you a free holiday. And unfortunately, many doctors will go along with that. So this is no different, really. But of course, the problem is, where is this information being stored?
Proceeding with non-compliant solutions risks clinical safety, data protection breaches and financial exposure.
I've heard anecdotally down the pub, genuinely down the pub, that some clinicians are getting ahead of the game and are already using ambient AI to kind of record notes and things, even where their practice or their trust haven't yet caught up with them.
There is huge amounts of money to be made from the technological arms race here. But are hundreds of individual NHS bodies really able to sift out the sharks? So you're making...
This is why it's so important that there is strong government oversight when it comes to AI. The EU has been criticised for going too slowly, but I think at the end of the day, the EU might be taking the right approach. They're saying, look, we need to look at this and see, is it going to breach human rights? Is it going to breach data protection? Is it going to breach ethical rules? Is it going to breach rights for consumers? And we need to check out all of these things, because if we don't, we'll have a free-for-all. And you could see people's data, as was pointed out here, people's data falling into the wrong hands. Brian, thanks so much for that super chat. I'm sorry, Wes. I'm afraid I can't do that. Well said, Brad.
It sounds like this letter's actually quite a big deal. Is that what you think?
Yeah, I think this letter is a really significant moment. My own view is that the government should help in terms of the procurement decisions that trusts make. As we do with other forms of technology that we use in medicine, which ones are safe and which ones can be bought.
You're arguing the government should do a bit more than it is.
I think the government will need to do a bit more to guide the NHS in the best way to use this.
That actually makes it sound like in the short term it could be quite dangerous.
Well, I think what you've seen with ambient voice technology is that kind of let 1,000 flowers bloom approach has got its limits.
It's, once again, it's like any tool. It's like fire. Fire can help you cook, or it can burn your house down. A knife can help you, cut bread, but it can also be used as a weapon. And AI is the same. If it's used correctly, it can be hugely beneficial. For example, in this case with GPs, so they can offload 30% of their work to an AI to do all the bureaucracy. That saves them a huge amount of time. It saves them a lot of effort, and they can spend more time with their patients. And we hear so many times that many patients are not getting enough time. They have to run in and say, okay, I have this problem, and then ignore other issues that they have, and then they're not getting the proper treatment. So if doctors have more time, where's my AI wife? So I didn't get time to do this today, but there was a story I wanted to cover. Might have it next time. But it's about a guy who fell in love with an AI, which has a weird twist at the end, but I'll keep that for another day. Anyway, guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I just want to cover one more story before we go, because it's the big one of this week, of course, which is the ceasefire.
Prime Minister, President Trump seems furious that the ceasefire has broken. He says Iran and Israel don't know what the F word, I can't repeat it on camera.
I was hoping that that Beth Rigby would say fuck. I was hoping that Keir Starmer would say fuck as well, but because you never hear them say these words. If the President of the United States is saying it on live TV, then I think it's okay for a journalist to repeat it, and I think it's okay for the Prime Minister to repeat it.
What they're doing. Given his support for President Netanyahu, can you understand his level of anger today? It's humiliating and frustrating for him, isn't it, that this has happened?
Well, I think we've got to put this in its proper context. In the early hours of today, we saw a ceasefire. That is a good thing for the region.
Why is Starmer always in a frigging military base? I think he has I think it's a sort of he's cosplaying. He likes this.
Region and more widely, we need to maintain that ceasefire, and I think it's very important at this NATO summit that we all work together to make sure that we do, because that ceasefire creates the space for what needs to happen next, which is the negotiation.
It's completely pointless interviewing the Prime Minister, because he has no influence over this. Like, none of us. The only people you should be really interviewing is the Ayatollah, Netanyahu, and Trump, because it's a three-way with them. Nobody else is getting any influence over them whatsoever. Like Donald Trump, when he carried out this attack, when he dropped the bomb in Iran, he didn't consult Britain. Like, we're actually going to avoid Diego Garcia. We're actually going to fly the planes directly from Missouri and just refuel them along the way. Partly because you'd need the UK government's position. They would say yes, of course, but Trump didn't want to wait for that. So he's not even we're in different times now. This is not like 20 years ago where there was a build-up to an attack, like with the war in Iraq. It's completely different now. It's just Donald Trump decides, I'm not going to attack Iran, and then somebody walks into the room and says, actually, it'd be a good idea. And then Trump is like, oh, okay. And then we're going to attack Iran. That seems to be basically US foreign policy at the moment. Also domestic policy, but it's foreign policy that impacts most of the rest of us. So it's basically whoever Donald Trump last spoke to is his policy at the moment, which is a scary idea. Because how the hell are we supposed to know what this president wants to do? He presents himself as a peace man, a peace-loving president, a man of peace, a man who wants the Nobel Peace Prize, and then at the very next moment, he's dropping a massive bomb that cannot be delivered by any other air force on the planet on Iran. A country that the US has avoided attacking directly over the last number of decades. We should all use AI sex robots for Boris Johnson. Then he can fuck something repeatedly without overpopulating. Wonderful idea, Brad. I don't know what it would look like. Maybe we can ask some people in chat. What should the bot for Boris Johnson look like? Maybe himself. I have a strange idea that him and Donald Trump would really like the idea of a sex bot looking like themselves. They're narcissists, okay? It's the ultimate goal of a narcissist. Ask Stephen Miller. It's easy, Max. Yeah, Stephen Miller is really the one pouring poison. Somebody said, I don't remember who said it, but they said that the ironic thing is Donald Trump may actually be the less evil individual in the entire administration. It's not, Donald Trump is evil, but he's just too stupid to understand what's going on, and he's surrounded by people who are really evil but intelligent, which is the worst type. So Donald Trump doesn't know what's happening, and he has people who know exactly what's going on, and they're steering him in a different direction, in whatever direction they want. So this is why you see this: the tariffs are on, the tariffs are off, war is on, war is off. So we don't know what's really happening because there are forces behind the scenes which are directing the president. So guys, I want to end here. So I want to say thanks so much for coming on to everyone. Thanks for all the super chats. Thanks to moderators for doing a wonderful job. Sorry that we started a little bit late. There were some issues I had offline, technical issues here. So I want to finish with one for the road. So I hope you enjoyed this before we go, and I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. But enjoy this before we say goodnight.
Colin from Portsmouth is on the line. Hello, Colin.
I am disgusted, Anthony. Absolutely disgusted. This is not a heat wave.
Yeah.
It's called summer, and it's lovely. It used to happen every year before the wokerati banned weather.
Well, it has been unusually hot, Colin. That's the thing, isn't it?
Only if you're not used to it. You
Yeah.
need to train yourself. I'm spending 4 hours a day sat in a Ford Mondeo in my local Tesco car park, windows up, no shade, heated full on, and a massive thermos of hot beefy soup.
That sounds horrendous, Colin. Please don't put those images into my mind.
But it's lovely when I come out. It's weather, Anthony. It builds character.
A lot of people are concerned, Colin. Schools are closing early. There's lots
Because of a bit of sun. Don't make me laugh, mate. Back in my day, if the playground didn't melt your shoes, it wasn't a proper education. You'd come home with third-degree burns and a cornetto. That's what made this country great.
What about the environmental risks, though? The wildfires, Colin, the droughts.
Wildfires? There's more fire hazard in a Weatherspoons curry night. You want a national emergency, Anthony? I went to 4 shops yesterday and not one of them had Soleros. Labour have deliberately brought about an ice cream famine. Total collapse of society.
Do you think climate change might be playing a part, though, Colin, in your heart of hearts?
No, not having it. Al Jolson made climate change up when he ran for president in the 1980s.
Yep.
It's nonsense. Mate, it rained solid for 12 years in Portsmouth between 1993 and 2005. I've still got trench foot. Now the sun comes out for a week and we act like the sky's on fire. It's nothing but fear-mongering by the wokerati. And fear is the worst type of monger.
So we don't need a hosepipe ban in your view, Colin?
No, the opposite, mate. We should make daily hosepipe fights compulsory. We used to duel in the street back in my day. Proper aquatic warfare. It brought communities together. My nan was such a ninja with a Nerf gun, she ended up getting approached by MI5.
Wow.
Happy days.
Yeah.
Anyway, mate, thanks for having me on. Love to the family.
Love to the family, Colin. Love to the family.
I'm off to put some extra thin ham slices on my chest and sit in the freezer in the nuddy.
Wonderful. Have a great week, guys. I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. Stay safe, take care, and good night.